Hello, everyone. This is the Valley Green Energy Working Group meeting. This is our monthly meeting. We are essentially the steering committee, if you will, for the Valley Green Energy Community Choice Aggregation. And with that, we can get started. We have all three communities represented, which is great. Let me just see, sorry, I just have to move Adele into the meeting. All right. So just to get started with our agenda, the first item is to review and vote the minutes from the March 20th meeting. And I just want to apologize for the last meeting. My daughter had a health issue. We weren't sure what was going on. It was a couple of days of doctor's visits and it turned out to be a virus, thankfully. So she was okay, but it was a little scary there for a couple of days. So thank you for your patience and I apologize again. But as for the minutes, they're from the March 20th meeting, so I know they're a ways back. I'm assuming people reviewed them. If not, I can share them on screen. What would people's preference be, to take the time to review them on screen or to just have a vote?
I'm fine with a vote.
I move to adopt the minutes as.
Okay. Well, there you go. All right, and we have a second.
Second.
Okay, Ben, your vote,
Yes.
and Bob?
Yes.
And mine is also yes. So the minutes are approved from March 20th. Okay, so moving right along, public comment, I don't believe we have, let me see. We do not have anyone from the public in attendance, so no public comment. So we can move on to our Valley Green Energy updates, which I don't know if others have any, but I have to say right now things are kind of a status quo and a holding pattern. There's nothing really happening, nothing to really report. No communication from the consultant about anything pressing. I know I've been busy doing a lot of other things, so this hasn't really been on my radar, to be honest. The update I can give is that as far as when we were talking about our next steps and drafting a request for a proposal for engaging someone to develop a business plan, I am working on that. I'm going to fully admit that I started working on it this morning, but I sort of got into a groove with it. So I'm feeling pretty good that I'll be able to get a draft done and get it over to Bob and Ben for kind of their input into it, and then can share it with the group at some point when it feels more ready. It will go to the Amherst procurement officer for being distributed and released. And Amherst has its own standard format that they do for RFPs. So really the scope of work is going to be the piece of it that we're going to focus on. So I'll work on that with Ben and Bob. And then I think maybe, I mean, it can probably wait till the next meeting and we could review the scope of work if you'd like, if that would make people happy. We can just go over the scope of work at the next meeting and make that an agenda item.
Sounds good.
It
Sounds
gives
good to
me
me.
Okay, gives me a target too, so, and us, and, the three of us to have that scope ready. So just give me a second while I write this down, because I don't want to lose this. Okay, so that's for our, where are we, May, June meeting. Let's go by so fast. So that is all. I don't anticipate this being a full hour-and-a-half meeting today. I don't have any other updates, so we could go right to the Leah updates, and I guess we had discussion of data use for outreach. I don't know if that was a carryover from last time or if that was something you did want to discuss at this meeting.
Yeah, the question is for Mass Power Choice, I think, is what data will we have available and what can we do with it? So, for example, will we have block level data? And will we understand the notion that the communities cannot have the data because that would open it up to FOIA requests. But will we have meaningful data to analyze related to energy use? So I'm obviously not prepared to discuss this in detail, but if any of you can help me out, that would be appreciated.
So I have had a discussion, so this is not a discussion with a lawyer, but it was discussion with the city's chief of staff, Alan Wolf, who has been the primary point of contact for FOIA requests for the city. And he basically said that private and personally identifiable information is you don't it should not be released in a FOIA request, and it would be redacted, and that the requestor must pay the cost to find and redact that information. Like, that's going to take staff time, and so that there's a fee associated with complying with FOIA requests. So his opinion was that that it is possible for us to acquire the data and not have it be exposed, basically because there's already law protecting individual privacy. So that's a possibility. That doesn't give us the permission, however, to go and share it with anybody. So I don't know that it solves the Dell's problem, which is how do we get the contacts for who we want to talk to, because that's private information that we don't have the right to share. So that's, I feel like, even if we have it, we still don't have a way to get it to you in a useful way. At least that I know of. Sorry.
It doesn't have to come to us. You know, we can work collectively on an outreach letter that the municipalities would send to those who we wanted to work with, to and then they can elect to work with whatever entity we identify as, like, if we have energy coaches who could work with them, or
So we could
send them to Mass Save or
we
something.
could come up with an outreach that was a little bit targeted, and that the city did the initial reach out with information that could then put them, as they actively connect with somebody else, whether it's you or somebody you're recommending. That seems okay, or legal anyway.
If I could, I know I'm facilitating, but I had a thought. I'm just sort of thinking about when we did that energy save effort where we had the home screenings. I mean, to me, I don't personally, as a homeowner, if I got something like that, that would be very compelling, and it didn't seem to generate the kind of response that, honestly, I was flabbergasted to think that people were getting this information and not really acting on it. And it had the support of the town. I mean, I don't know what else we could have done. That to me was like a pretty high level outreach. And I don't even see us getting to sort of that point. I just wonder if there's a way, working with our consultant who has been doing this work for so long, because I do think they can access data on our behalf. I'm just wondering if, not that but they could maybe boil it down or help us find a way to target certain neighborhoods, as you said, Andra, like maybe if we can get it at the neighborhood level to do the outreach. I think, energy coaches seem like a great idea. I'm just I just find like outreach efforts are it just seems really hard to engage people. It's just a hard thing to do. And especially on this kind of thing. So it was more sharing my thoughts about it rather than having any solution. Andra, Adele, I'm sorry, go ahead.
What if the communications said you seem to be using more energy than your building should allow or could allow. And therefore, we have the following suggestions. So that it would not be a general outreach letter, it would be more specific. And by the way, it says that there's 7 participants, and so I don't know if that means that a member of the public has joined or not, but anyway.
Yeah, we have someone from the public and we have public comment at the end. Well, we don't, but we can add it. That's fine. We'll
Yeah.
just add it at the end.
Okay, so anyway, that's my comment. Thank you.
Andrew?
Yeah, just for those who don't know what the Energy Save outreach was that Stephanie was describing, I was working with them at the time, so I was a part of that outreach effort, and they did a drive-by
Thermographic image of houses.
right, image of every house. And then they took the 20% highest energy highest energy users, not energy users, but the ones
Heat
that
loss
The
signal.
showed the
Heat-
most loss. Yeah. And then the letter included a picture of their house with, the heat loss showing, and so it really was very targeted. And I agree with Stephanie that kind of outreach is very difficult. Energy saving, I, as a staff member, also contacted people who we had phone numbers for to follow up. And so we got, a number of people, hundreds of people responding, but this went out to like, I don't know, 10,000 people in multiple towns, in 10 different towns. So it wasn't very successful.
And I think the thing about that program too is that, to me, I mean, it literally was demonstrating like, this is the heat loss that you're paying for. And I mean, to me, an image, was way more than even just getting, some kind of contact about, we know you're using a lot of energy. It's like, this is demonstrating that you're losing and paying for this energy loss. Do you want to do something about it? We can help you, and I just, I was surprised there wasn't more engagement around that. Ben?
Yeah, I kind of want to help problematize this with the concept of these data. So we can get monthly data that shows what every VGE subscriber uses in kilowatt hours per month, right? And we've got read dates for that, and we can look at weather. And so like we could, if after accumulating, say, a year's worth of data, we could identify the weather-related signal to electricity use. But that's electricity use, not gas, not delivered fuels. And so what you're going to find is those with heat pumps, you're going to find them. And those with some electric resistance, you're going to find them. And those who use air conditioning on the regular, you're going to find them, right? Because you can regress that against weather. But the biggest users might not be any of those people, right? The biggest users might be ones who have their marijuana grow in their house, or whatever it is. Like there's all these other types of uses. So then you put somebody into a block. Let's say we were to break them into quintiles and say we're going to address the top quintile first. People just like all the users. And aside from finding out that, hey, you're using a lot of electricity because you were foolish enough to get a heat pump. I'm saying that's how they might interpret it. it's only on occasion when you're able to match that. I mean, you could match that to like the square footage of the house, and you could kind of again come up with a limit and say, boy, if you've got a heat pump, something's wrong, and we can kind of provide a free diagnostic service to help you figure out what the heck, like your heat pump is actually using electric resistance whenever the temperature falls below 30 degrees. And by the way, I've had people contact me. So I did this heat pump presentation at our senior center a few months ago. And since then, I've had residents contact me with like $10,000 electricity bills. Yeah. I'm not kidding. And saying, I got heat pumps, and I was like, this is wrong. Let's take a look at it. Some of it was that they were on a third party provider. We had never been able to find them, and they were paying 34 cents supply rate or something like that. So we got them on VG. But they also had, like, there are a bunch of things that are on my checklist of things to look for. That was a pretty personalized service. That was like more than the service that I gave to Amherst back when I was an extension professor at UMass in some ways. So that's not very replicable. And then again, these people wouldn't have showed up because they're not on Valley Green Energy. So I think we have to be really clear about what are we going to do with the data that's going to result in an outreach that's specific. Because even with Energy Save, yeah, we've got an image of one side of your house or maybe a corner of your house or something, which might be where the heat loss is happening, but it might be somewhere else. And unless you're seeing that in your bills, it doesn't feel real. And we tried to do a lot with other assessor data and permit data to figure out who was using what kind of stuff and try to really target our stuff in Northampton even more. Back in 2017, I was just kind of helping Chris Mason out. And we found no associations between the different types of data. In other words, there was no statistically significant relationships that we could use. So it's hard. But I guess long way of saying really, really hard.
Well,
And
and
I support what you just said, Ben, and I'm thinking even of my own little tiny personal situation where we're using more electricity because we've installed heat pumps, but we're using hardly any oil. So the issue here to me, frankly, is not electricity use, it's energy use. And to the extent that we can or can't ascertain data that would allow us to look at something that is more global, electricity, gas, and oil. Those are the three biggies around here. I don't know that this could be as productive, and you've already have examples of how it's not productive. We just started here in Pelham a program called Electrify Pelham. And we've got from our energy committee, again, this is all run with volunteers here, but from our energy committee, we have, quote, energy consultants, or, so to speak, who are offering to meet with people. And it'll be interesting to see. We just launched this, I think it was a month or something like that ago. And it'll be interesting to see, how many of the 535 homes in Pelham reach out.
I can follow up a little bit with what's going on in Amherst too. I think last I told you we were about to launch our heat pump program officially. And now that we have, we're not that far in, and our goal, our threshold, because we were using ARPA funding and we have limited funds for the financial incentive, was 30 homes, and we have 15 already in the pipeline. And then we have, I think, additional 4 to 5 after the Sustainability Festival that we're interested in, signed on to sort of get started. So, at least in terms of the target that we have, I think we're doing pretty well in that regard for at least that effort. So I feel, like that's at least something that appears to be working right now for us anyway. But, again, it's like what happens when that program is over, because it has to end in 2026. That's when the funding has to be fully expended. sort of continuing the effort for the outreach. And I sort of struggle with this too, because I just have also wonder, like, yes, data is always helpful, but I just feel like the outreach is so important that I don't know if the outreach is very just sort of broadly across the community, and we take every opportunity that we can to get to people through, housing associations and I don't know, any kind of other, regional advocacy group and, nonprofits, ways to just get the information continually disseminated to people that, that people will sort of catch on and move forward. I just don't know. It's just seemed like so much work, like that energy save effort was a lot of work. It was, there was a lot to it. And I think, I just sometimes wonder, like, is the staff time worth the return that we get? Like, is it really worth the return to like be so focused on the data? Maybe we just need to really focus on the outreach to the broader communities and really keep putting ourselves out there. I also think there's something to people once other people hear of their neighbors doing it. It was the same with the Solarize program. We just built off of Northampton's success, honestly. Northampton did it first, and we're like, Northampton did this, we're doing it now. And, we got even more homes. Like we were able to install like a full megawatt of solar capacity on the Amherst residences. And for at least a couple of years, we were like the first, we sort of had the most conversions in the program. So that was really exciting. But again, that was based on building off of what was happening. And I think what we're talking about right now with our heat pump campaign is to build off the successes of like, once we get people in the pipeline, we're hoping that by the time we do our next information campaign, that we're able to actually be able to get a resident who's done the conversion to actually have like a few minutes within the presentation to talk about the process and what it's doing for them and how the process was for them, so that people can build off that momentum of like what their neighbor did. I just feel like that's one of the
Yeah.
more effective ways of getting it, moving it forward. So I don't know. I mean, I'm just throwing things out there because whatever sticks to the wall, that we can do to make this work.
I'm wondering if we have any potential, we meaning Valley Green Energy, has any potential when we're talking about outreach to enclose information in the monthly bills that are sent to people. I mean, for me, we don't pay electric bills, so everything we do is all online. So I never get a bill in the mail, nor do I ever pay a bill. But I still get information from Eversource through my email every single month. Now, I'm wondering whether we have a similar potential just for Stephanie, you were just talking about the importance of outreach. And I think to the extent that we can make Valley Green Energy more visible to those who are using it, and as you pointed out, maybe they then talk to others who are not potentially using it right now. But and we can talk about some general stuff in such an outreach thing. I'm sure all of you get, those of you who are on Eversource, you get these emails every month, the customer updates or something like that. Is that even possible for us, for Valley Green Energy subscribers, as a supplier, as opposed to a distributor?
I don't know. That's a question I think we would have to ask Mass Power Choice. Is it possible for us to do some kind of very targeted outreach within the, as part of the monthly billing? Because I know those bills obviously come from the utility providers, so I don't know how open they are to having us like insert something, but we could sort of see if there's a way that even they could do something. Maybe it's not monthly, maybe it's quarterly, maybe it's twice a year. I don't know, something that sort of says like, because again, they do, they can more easily access the data, I think. Well, I mean, we all can, but I know they have access to the data too. And maybe they can do something sort of look at it or analyze it. Like, I wonder if that's part of something they would do. It's just worth asking them.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I suspect no. I mean, I'm just saying, sure, it's worth asking, but they're going to run into the same problem we run into, which is you've got electricity use, not energy use,
Mm,
no delivered
right,
fuels, no gas. So that's one problem. Secondly, I don't think they've got their own bill and insert generating and mailing facility. So I imagine it's not impossible, but it might be hard to get it targeted just to one zip code or whatever it is that you're doing. Um, I haven't done it yet, but my intention is to start getting inserts into the water bills,
Mhm.
because that's a utility at least our city controls. Um, and I, I mean, I'm not sure that anyone loves their water bill any more than they love their electric bill. So you're already appearing at an unpleasant moment in someone's life, to the degree that they're getting paper bills at all. So that's a challenge. Um,
But can I ask a question, Ben? If it goes out, I mean, if they got a paper bill and they got the insert, I mean, couldn't the insert go as an attachment to an electronic bill as well? Like, if you're
uh,
including it as the paper, wouldn't they attach it as the electronic?
yes, in fact, I believe they do that. I know my National Grid bill does that on occasion, but I never click on it. Because I'm on auto pay, and then occasionally, like Eversource, where I get gas, although that's about to end, um, is there are attachment or inserts that would normally go in your bill, like the here's the smell of gas, and they want you to actually get a physical piece of paper and they mail that to you separately. Sorry,
But
Adele.
I'm wondering if thinking about what you said, Ben, nobody looks forward to getting their bills.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm wondering if instead of the idea of doing something associated with a bill, that we decouple it. And that instead, the kind of outreach, I realize Eversource is this huge company, right? But the kind of outreach that they do every month with an email. Um,
But they have your email because you chose to
yeah.
subscribe to their web portal so that you can have paperless billing.
Right. Okay. So I guess my point is the outreach from Valley Green Energy, just getting in front of people. You have to get a lot of messages in front of people before anything, penetrates, before somebody maybe even clicks on it or does whatever, that opens it or whatever. So I'm just trying to think of ways that Valley Green Energy can put itself out there in front of people. And it doesn't have to be related to data. It can be a messaging about what's happening, what options people have, et cetera, just over and over again.
We still need to reach the people who are on third-party suppliers.
Absolutely.
And finding, again, whenever I find them, they're shocked and horrified that they're paying, because a lot of them signed up at 9 cents and then it just ballooned to something really big. Like, I mean, it's, yeah. So yeah, we need to find them. It's really hard. Social media maybe, like it may be that some of the 1 mil that we're getting, or that some of that funding that's coming in needs to go towards an outreach campaign to just let people know who are missing out. And I'm willing to bet that nobody in this group is an expert in modern outreach techniques. I know I have no skills with social media, and yet I think it's probably important.
Well, we have a communications manager and I think she's really good at
Okay.
her outreach. And she does social media output about notices all the time. And I get them both in my personal, I get them in my Facebook account, I get them in my work email, I get them in multiple locations. So I do feel like they're effective. I want to get to Adele because she's had her hand up for a while. Sorry, go ahead, Adele.
I agree that we need to get to the people who have the independent suppliers, but that theoretically, we've asked the utility for that data. the utilities for that data. So presumably, eventually, we will get that data. But I wanted to point out that we get in the mail a paper copy separately from our bill from National Grid about our use of electricity, and it compares our use with the most efficient of your neighbors and the least efficient of your neighbors, et cetera, et cetera. And so, of course, our usage went up when we installed heat pumps, and the utility doesn't know that. So therefore, our rating was less good. So anyway, I just wanted to reiterate the point that Ben made.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about that, it does sort of reflect poorly when you transition because you don't understand what the context was. So it's literally like, I mean, I sort of feel like there's a case in point too, where the data can be misleading. So that's why I think I'm saying, you know, for me personally, I'm not as hung up on the data as I am about the outreach. Like, to me, I really feel like we could spend a lot of time working on the data piece, but to me, I really feel like we really need to put all that effort into the outreach piece about getting information out to people about, you know, what does this mean? Or did you notice that your neighbor had a higher, you know, when you were looking at that little, you know, extra information from the utility that said your neighbor was now actually, who maybe in the past had historically always been more efficient than you, suddenly their usage increases. This might be the reason, and, you know, ultimately they might be actually using less energy in the long run. But, you know, I think we just need to, you know, there's so much education that has to happen around this. So personally, I would really rather focus on that piece and doing, like Ben said, like a real targeted campaign.
I obviously I agree with that. And it's also because we need to establish the relationship so we have multiple points of contact and multiple, so we can come back to people, that there's a level of familiarity and trust as new programs roll out, and we want to be able to make sure that people know about them. Again, as you know, I kind of hope that Valley Green Energy can, or some other way that we can start to enroll people in other similar programs. So more enrollment in connected solutions, which gets them some money, but also helps the grid. Or or even people who who can't do solar on their roof for whatever reason, and could enroll in new community solar developments. And I've been talking with a battery, actually it's a manufacturer, but looking at the idea of a community battery, so that you could get essentially a subscription to that, get a portion of the profits off of basically arbitrage, with the idea that we need batteries and we need solar, and NIMBYism is the biggest enemy, and you're less likely to be a NIMBYist if you're making some money or if you're getting a share of it. And so I feel like we should, and if you're installing your heat pumps, all of a sudden your electric bill is higher. So if you can get credits onto your bill, or some other way that electricity is associated with giving you money, it's better. But yeah, we need to contact people and have some level of trust that we can kind of enroll people.
Yeah, agreed. Bob, were you about to say or ask a question?
No, I want to be in agreement about this general outreach that is not based on usage, because I just feel it's important for Valley Green Energy to be something that people hear from and becomes familiar to them. And that not only do we provide energy, but there are other solutions that we can help with as well. And just to get that message out to our users, our subscribers, over and over again in some regular way, I think would be really important. And again, I come back to if I use my own personal situation, you're going to gasp, but we were using 6,000 kilowatt hours of electricity a year here, roughly every year. We now use 11,500. We generate it all. It's because there's an electric car, there's heat pumps, there's heat pump hot water heating. We switched from gas to induction for cooking, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
All of these different things that we did following our solar panels upped our electricity, almost doubled it.
Mhm.
And I think we hardly use anything else at all. A little bit of oil for the basement zone, and that's it. As opposed to 500 or 600 gallons, we might use, 75 now. So anyway, I just want to point out that it can be really misleading to look at usage because especially if electric cars get into the picture. I mean, our electric car sucks down 3,500 kilowatt hours a year, just the car.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just want to point that out. And therefore, I'm in favor of regular outreach. Let's get ourselves in front of people, let them know who we are and what we have, what we can offer them.
Darcy?
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking that as far as targeting big users, it's not of electricity. It's of fossil fuel usage. So that's such a big, electrifying the region is a big part of our mission. So we are interested in heating fuels. So is there a way to know what big users, what businesses, what big apartment complexes or whatever are still using oil? Probably like most of them, right?
Not in
Yeah.
Northampton.
Yeah, I would say some of them. I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily say most. I think it depends on where. We don't, we have the university, obviously, in Amherst, but in terms of like outside of the university, there's not a lot really.
The new ones use heat pumps, but
Right.
I think all the old apartment complexes probably don't. I guess I've just always been assuming that we would try to target those big fossil fuel energy hogs. Not based on their electricity usage necessarily, but their overall fossil fuel usage. So because of the fact that we want everybody to convert to heat pumps.
So, but we don't have to have their data to know that we want to target those places, right? There's not that many, honestly. So why not just like identify like what are the large, like, I don't know if you're doing this, Ben, but the state's requiring us to do a report out on, which I need to follow up with you after this because I feel like I'm a little bit drowning in that task. So I want to talk to you about it.
Gabi just did it and it was painful.
Yeah, I want to talk to you afterwards. I might call you if that's okay, if you have time. Anyway, there's certain sort of threshold of a footprint which we have to provide energy data or information on municipal buildings. But it would be easy enough based on assessor's information and just sort of looking at what do we have in town, to identify the larger institutions, buildings, housing complexes, and just really target them. I think the problem with the housing is always the landlord piece engagement is always a bit challenging. But I feel like that's maybe an effort where we have to sort of ramp up a little bit more on engaging for those larger complexes. Like, how do we, let's try to develop a strategy on really outreaching to them more directly. Like, how do we get to them?
So I can say that we with East Hampton have hired an energy advocate and we've tasked them really with focusing on exactly the question you're talking about, Stephanie, which is basically they're the hard to get, big reward, hard to get landlords and businesses to some degree. And so to some degree, I'm like, you figure it out, Hannah. And hopefully she'll, but the idea is that there aren't that many, so we can devote actual person hours to to really doing the outreach, really providing concierge service, really making the contact between the landlord and the service provider so that we can kind of like make it as easy as possible, basically is our idea, because there aren't that many. We can get, like you said, the output from the assessor's database to figure out who to talk to. And at least in Northampton, Gabi's actually been kind of like collecting this data, because a lot of it's landlords who are absent and like who's the actual decision maker. And so there's a lot of work, but at least our hope is that you get a big reward, so it's worth it. Yeah.
I have an idea I'm gonna throw out there to you, Bob.
Hmm.
What if Amherst and Pelham work together to try to engage, like maybe get some grant funding to try to engage someone to do the same thing for our two communities? Because if Northampton's already sort of got that covered, I tried already, we didn't get any funding, but maybe if we work together, two communities working together has a better shot at getting something.
Right.
So maybe we could,
I don't know if there's any overlap here, Stephanie, but our energy committee is in the midst of preparing its first grant now that we're in this community leaders program, because the first sum of money that you're eligible for apparently is this planning grant.
yeah.
And I don't know whether that is an umbrella or could include something like what Ben was talking about and like what you're talking about that we could do together. But I know that they're, working hard on that grant to get it in on the deadline.
Yeah, I'd be curious of what they're working on. I mean, we are targeting information for a specific building, for engineering, for a specific building to
Mhm.
decarbonize it. Because we're doing a lot of other work on it, so that's kind of like the next step, and then we can follow up with, application for funding for the actual heat pump conversion.
But let's talk
Oh.
offline about this
Yeah,
idea.
because we might, we might not be able to tap those funds, but there's certainly other programs in the state that we might be able to tap through, like maybe Mass CEC or something like that. So,
Excellent.
yeah, we should. So I feel like I have two conversations to schedule with both of you,
Yeah.
Ben and.
And so there's another little thing to throw in there. I'm also working with, but the city doesn't get any of this. This is just me kind of helping out. The grantee would be Co-op Power. And they have someone there named Cindy Fand, who actually was an energy advocate under the Community First Partnership for Shelburne and some hill towns up there. So she has a lot of experience with this already, but she now works for Co-op Power, and we wanted kind of an add-on, which is to outreach, particularly in this case to low-income people, and have a bundle that gets you like the heat pump, the weatherization, enrollment in connected solutions, making sure that the heat pumps and hot water heaters supplied are all compatible with that, and a community solar buy-in to try and lower your overall bill. Again, Co-op Power obviously provides that part. So we're applied for an Empower grant that would basically support her doing that outreach. And that, whether or not she gets it, but let's say she gets it, that's 3 years, but it's part-time. And so it's possible that, that you wouldn't have to reinvent the wheel, that you could work with her, or maybe, obviously lessons learned from us with East Hampton as well. And maybe there's like not that much additional that's needed to buy a few hours a week, or one year of this kind of intensive outreach. And a question, I think this is a question to the rest of the group, is could some of the income that's coming from Valley Green Energy towards Amherst and Pelham be used for that?
I mean, it has to be used for staff time specifically but it has to be the benefits have to be shared across all of the members of the aggregation, right? So you can't just sort of target only, like it can't just
Oh.
benefit a small,
The answer is no.
yeah, I guess the answer is no.
Yeah.
I have something that I think is a genuinely useful way to use the data. And that would be to help shave the peak. Connected Solutions helps with, if you're using your thermostat for your I think it's just electricity. Well, I don't have gas, so I
your
don't know.
thermostat for electricity, your hot water heater if it's electric, or heat pump motor, and your car charger. Those are the main, and batteries if you have a home battery. So it basically enrolls all of these remotely controllable devices, and they basically get set back or discharged or whatever the appropriate choice is for
Yeah.
them
Yeah,
moments of peak demand.
but not everybody has a, connectable electric car charger or water heater. And if we do, this kind of education, especially for the high users who are drawing during the peak times as well as other times, if we can educate them to reduce their use, like waiting till 8, wait till 8, that's a California
We're getting monthly,
term.
we're getting monthly data, not peak data.
Not, we don't get peak data, but
The low profile.
but we know, if we know the high users, we can bet that they're also high users during the peak. And if we can get those super users to reduce, then as a, collective, we're going to be able to reduce the load on the grid. So that would be one, I think, legitimate way to use the data.
But again, why, I mean, let's, assume that a lot of those larger institutions, those businesses, those are the people we really want to target, because we don't have many. Again, I don't feel like it's like we absolutely need the data to target them. Like, I think we can do that, and I just feel like, especially to shave the peak data, just as universal across the board. I mean, yes, we want to get the people who use it the most, but I feel like even if you get other people, cumulatively, even if those lower users are shaving their peak, that's all gonna make a difference. So I think targeted outreach to sort of those larger, larger institutions or organizations, businesses, whatever, is something we could do. And then like a sort of general information campaign that we just, I think to Bob's point, we just keep getting the information out there. We just keep giving really useful information to people over and over and over again until it starts to sink in, because
So-
people know they need to hear it.
So what we don't have is people's emails. Municipalities have their emails if they've signed up for online billing and maybe some other ways. We don't have their phone numbers. We just know their electric meters, and that's not going to give us a way to do, any kind of regular direct outreach. So is there, a way that we could have to start collecting people's emails? Is there a way to generate that kind of participation
I feel
in
like
order
that,
to continue that kind of
yeah.
ongoing outreach?
I mean, it feels like that has to be a volunteer basis, right? People have to willingly want to give that information out. And I think really the way to do that is when we send out maybe bill inserts, or when we do any kind of our outreach, we can say to people, are you willing to participate? Do you want to share your email, phone number with us? And we will provide you information, additional information, or, help you analyze your data. I don't know that we can say that, but,
Yeah.
that's what we're gonna do. But, just, maybe, I think people have to voluntarily provide it. I don't think we can just sort of,
Yeah, there's no way to suck it in. Oh, well, I mean, the reality is, I know plenty of people over in the computer science department at UMass who do know how to scrape the data. If I give them the addresses, they can scrape data and they can get, they could probably get your DNA. Or if they know Elon Musk, they can get everything. Um, but um, but we do have their mailing addresses, and if we send out a mailer, if we have a program or a landing page for them to go to where there's something that's easy and where they'd want to do it, because I think the basic message is Valley Green Energy is your community's attempt to save you money and reduce your carbon emissions. And we're looking for additional ways to help you out. And so join the fun. And and then once you're in, you're in. And then we can start finding programs, finding ways to cooperate with somebody who wants to aggregate demand response, and again, we can't do that yet without the smart meters, but they're coming, and you know, um, or if it's maybe we find a really good deal on community solar where you can enroll at a higher percentage, or a lower, you pay less per credit basically than a lot of us are. And or actually do some of the things that was what the original idea of VGE was, like, oh, let's do our own generation. Well, we may not be able to do it directly, but if you have enough subscribers to a community solar installation, that's how you finance that. That's how you get the revenue guarantee that is required for financing the project. And then you work with a contractor, and and that might be another way. So yeah, I think just constant contact and reaching out. Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
go ahead, Darcy.
So Ben, it sounds like you're saying that the towns themselves could directly send out a mailing from VGE offering incentives and deals and stuff like that periodically.
I mean, we'd have to have mailings cost money, right? So we'd have to have a budget to do that. I don't know whether we have additional mailings that not First Point, but Mass
Our choice.
Mass Power Choice, if they have additional mailings that are kind of part of our contract with them that we could get built in. Obviously, I'd rather not pay for it. But I don't see any other way than sending stuff to addresses.
One of the interesting things about all of this, how many of us have ever thought about getting anything or communicating in any way with our energy supplier? We all interact with the national grids and Eversources of the world because we have to. But, I mean, before Valley Green Energy, I never got anything from the supplier. I'd get it from Eversource, and they'd be talking about whatever they're talking about, right? So, and I'm wondering whether this kind of outreach that we're talking about, so it's unusual. It's like, wait a minute, oh, Valley Green, they're my supplier. They're communicating with me. What's that? Never heard of such a thing. Okay, but B, if we built the kind of portal or website or whatever we'd need that we can send people to so that they can, if they want to, sign up, so to speak, for whatever we're going to do. I mean, because for example, if we on each of our towns' websites, if we had such a portal and we were all set up for it, on each of our town's website, we could have something, right there, and people could click on it and go to the portal. We could get an article in a few of the local ways of the newspapers, but also the e-newspapers that some of us subscribe to for local news. Again, you put an article in there with a link. It's a free way to get that started. Let's put it that way, to get started with that and to see what kind of response we'd get. How many people would, would come forward and say, hey, this sounds cool. I'll click over here. It'll be interesting just to see what the response rate is. It's kind of a test, but we'd have to build something. And I think this is a legitimate use of our resources that we get from the fee for Valley Green Energy, so that Valley Green Energy can begin to create a way to communicate with its customers. I don't know, but so something along those lines, which doesn't involve mailings and all of that, but does involve building a website and does involve, this is where the cost comes in. If you're going to build a website, there's got to be something going on there regularly, some new stuff, new information. So people are writing stuff, people are, et cetera. So content creation, it doesn't come in free. People have to do it. So we're letting ourselves in for that as a part of the cost, if you will, of managing Valley Green Energy, if we think it's important to do this.
Well, I mean, so technically Valley Green Energy has a web presence, but maybe the thing to do is with what exists. Is there a way to use some of those funds to have them create that active content?
Exactly.
Content, so it would be basically providing that to our consultant who's already maintaining the website rather than creating something brand new. So maybe we could do the fund, use the funds that way. And we could sort of talk to them about that, that might not be a bad use of the funds.
And, like we have to know what we want to do before we're sending people to a website to go sign up to do it. But once we have that, I would disagree with Bob a little bit. It's a website, not a social media page. And so, like, we just need to know what we want to do and then have the way you can actually get to start doing it, presumably as a page on the website for Valley Green Energy. And then, yes, all the outreach that we talked about earlier should drive people to that page where they can sign up, and where they can kind of engage more with us than they have so far.
Yeah, so it's creating like one interactive page.
Yeah.
And that's where the content could always change and be updated, and which I don't know, I mean, like you said, it's not that it's necessarily hard to do, but it's just keeping up with it. But we can, maybe we can talk to them about that, but I think to your point, Ben, is knowing what we want from this. So we start collecting people's emails, phone numbers, if they're willing to sort of engage in that level, then what? Who's maintaining this? What's the use of it exactly? Like, I feel like these are parts of the things to me that start getting into more of the, because I was working on it this morning, sort of the JPE piece, a little bit. So I feel like in some ways we might be getting the cart a little bit ahead of the horse. Maybe what we want to focus on is more just right now, a good thing to do would be to talk to the consultant about getting a page together that's more interactive, what that might cost. We probably have I'm pretty sure we probably have the funds to be able to pay for something like that right now. So being able to pay them to do that and getting that created. And I think what we would at least start with is just all the ways in which we can keep getting information to people about, heat pumps, like, and be sort of more specifically targeted to, heat pump conversion and, peak use and shaving the peak and, those kinds of information that we want to really hammer home to people. And even third-party supply, because even though these are our customers, we can still be directing people outside of Valley Green Energy to the Valley Green Energy website, right? So that's another way of maybe roping people in, is like, are you on a third-party supplier? Check out our interactive page, learn about the benefits of, going with Valley Green Energy and blah, blah, blah. I don't know, but we can put the spin on it. So, maybe how do we feel about that as like a sort of goal. I feel like I want to have some kind of goal from this meeting, so,
Ah.
you know, like, what can we go back to our consultant with if we have this request? We could even just ask them what it would cost. Could they do it? What would the cost
I
be?
think we could also ask, have any communities you've worked with done anything similar? And what else have they done to try to do outreach?
You know, one of the things that you said, Stephanie, helped me to maybe think of this in two tracks. One track is the Valley Green Energy track, and the other track is the organization that we're trying to create. So the Valley Green Energy track right now, it seems to me, one of our major goals, frankly, should be to grow our subscriber base, which of course then we're getting into these the third party energy contracts that people have, et cetera, but growing our subscriber base. And remind me of the acronym for the organization, JPE?
The Joint Powers Entity, which we
the-
were
Right.
calling Valley Green Alliance.
Right. So the JPE, you know, could have the task of this other type of outreach that we've just been spending a lot of time on during this meeting, in terms of both educating people and helping people to, you know, think differently about how they might be able to use energy. Um, but maybe for this initial period, I guess the point that I'm making is that the Valley Green Energy entities focus perhaps right now should be continue to be on growing our base. And then at the same time, once the JPE is up and running, we have another mechanism for reaching out to people on a broader range of issues.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I agree, and I agree. I think that's why I was saying cart before the horse, like, let's,
Yeah.
you know, maybe dial this back a little bit to focus on what we can do right now and
Right.
what should our next steps be and our next goals be?
So I think that means, again, for Valley Green Energy, the next goal is to put the foot on the accelerator for getting this data about the third-party providers that some of the people in our three towns are currently using so that we can do outreach to them, and about what, you know, about Valley Green Energy and grow our base. Um, that would be one goal, it seems to me, that we should move forward on as aggressively as we can.
And I think, you know, the idea was also utilizing mass power choice. Because I do think, again, having that interactive page is a way that could actually bring in some of those people using third-party supply. Like, that's a good tool and resource to say, check this out. You know, because their supplier, like you said, they probably have no real engagement with their supplier at all. And so this is something that's different. So, okay, so,
I think Darcy wanted to say something.
oh, go ahead, Darcy. I was writing, I missed it.
Yeah, I just, you know, when I saw that Amherst and Pelham got the climate leader designation and is going to get that funding, I just feel like that is great, and I'm expecting that Northampton's going to get the same thing, and I just feel I'm hoping and waiting for all of us to really act in concert on some of these things, because it would be, it seems like it'd be very efficient for the group of towns to, you know, work together on some project, like the energy coaching or whatever. And then you would save time on staff, and we could, you know, when thinking about the JPE, that has always been some kind, you know, part of the vision is the towns working together and doing projects together that are, you know, putting our mission forward. So I'm hoping that some of that will be used to do joint planning.
I think at some point it may be, but like I was stating before, we have to, if a big goal is to decarbonize our building stock, $1 million, which sounds like so much, is gonna be helpful, but we need so much more than that. Like, it's gonna be hard to, this is what this program was really specifically designed for, was the fact that communities kept saying like, we're trying to meet these goals, but it's just so expensive.
Yeah.
So, if we're kind of leading by example and we need to decarbonize our building stock, we need to put that funding towards doing that, because otherwise, we're, to have to do it with just the sort of the capital that we have is not even nearly enough. And it's spread with all the different services that the town needs, and the town needs those services. So it's like, I think right now what we're doing is kind of the best effort we have in sort of collaborating, working forward right now, moving forward with Valley Green Energy and the Joint Powers Entity, but I don't see using the Climate Leader Communities funding in that way. We might find other funding that might be able to, that we might, like I was just talking to Bob about collaborating about the Energy Advocate. We might be able to find ways to do sort of some of that, but I wouldn't say those specific funds would be used for that.
Well,
I'm open
those-
to finding other
I don't
opportunities.
think they can
Those
be.
funds,
Yeah.
they're focused on municipal
Right, it's municipal.
decarbonization, not resident.
No, not at
Yeah.
all. No,
Yeah.
exactly. But there might be ways that we could do something collectively that focuses on the municipal, like energy supply or something that, I mean, potentially you could do something like that, but I just think that's so, that to me is way more down the road. That's not something we're going to be able to do right now. So the point is, I think there's still opportunity for us to maybe work on other funding mechanisms to do some collaboration. But right now, I feel like we have a lot on our plate, like, because trying to move, like getting that funding is great. It's not just given to us, we actually have to apply for it. So there's still an application process. So
You have to have an executable project,
yeah, and you have to have it. Well,
like,
for the implementation, which is why that's what that planning piece is for, which is why we're going to apply for engineering for a building conversion to decarbonize a building, and then we're going to apply for the implementation funding to install a heat pump
Cool.
or related. So that's
What's
our,
building, Stephanie?
we're not exactly sure yet because there's a few different options. The Bang Center is already they're doing quite a bit of assessment and work on updating the Bang Center. So potentially it could be there. My goal is Town Hall. I just would really love to see Town Hall, but there's so many things we have to do to Town Hall. So that might be a little ways down the road, but Bangs might be our first opportunity. So, but I don't know yet. It sort of depends like on facilities and what they're able to get done and what we agree to move forward. So it's 2:10. I'm wondering if there are any other questions or comments. So to summarize, I guess, I'm feeling like I'm sort of tasked with reaching out to Mass Power Choice. One about, this idea of seeing if they could put together some kind of interactive webpage as part of the Valley Green Energy website, that they would maintain what the cost would be and the potential to use our funds, which I'm sure we can for that purpose. And then the other was the question about data on third-party supply. Like, I think how do we get that data specifically? Or can we get that data specifically? And was there anything else?
Andra had suggested that we also ask Mass Power Choice to share what other communities have done with their web pages.
That was it.
That would be cool to find out.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. All right, anything else? Did I miss anything, or those are the three main takeaways for this meeting?
Mhm.
Well done. Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks, and I just want to, let's see, we do have, Lydia in the audience. Lydia, did you want to ask a question or have a comment? You can just raise your hand and I'll allow you to speak. Okay, I don't think Lydia has a question or comment, so next meeting agenda,
I don't think we did the LEA updates, did we?
well, that was what this whole last part was about, was your updates and discussion of data use. So we focused on the data use, but if you have updates, by all means.
I think we do.
Well, just so you know, next Tuesday, we're hosting Lisa Cunningham from Zero Carbon. I guess the name of the organization, right?
Zero Carbon MA.
Yeah. And she has been working on extending the 10-town pilot program for municipalities to be able to declare and work on becoming zero carbon communities and eliminating gas usage in particular, but so that we'll hear from her in, the progress on that. And then in June, we'll be hosting my son, Solomon Goldstein Rose, to speak about a new project that he's working on, looking at the potential for geothermal generated electricity locally. So.
And if you look at our website resource page, our last two presentations were really exciting. One was with a staff from the HEAT program talking about the, geothermal networking within local communities. And they talked about the Framingham program, et cetera, and had a lot of interesting data on their presentation. So that's on our website, or it's going to be on our website today. And we also had Paul Fenn come and talk about the bill that would would facilitate local power generation and microgrids and more behind the meter electricity in localities. So that was really interesting too. So if you want to see that, the presentations are on our website.
Which is localenergyadvocates.org.
Right.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. And do you have the dates for the two presentations?
I
May 20th.
Was
Lisa Cunningham is coming on the May 20th.
Okay,
And
Solomon?
Solomon is
You
presenting.
asking, were you asking,
June 17th is the June meeting.
were you asking about the prior presentations?
no,
Steph?
no, these two that are upcoming so that people know what the dates are.
Mhm.
Okay, and then the other ones, they can just you have them recorded on your website and people can just access and view them on the website.
they're on YouTube.
On YouTube, okay, so go to YouTube.
Oh, no, just go to the website. It's easier. They're all listed there.
Okay, great, excellent. Okay, so anything else, any other updates? Okay, so for our next meeting agenda, kind of the usual are Valley Green Energy updates, LEA updates, and I will work with Ben and Bob on getting the scope of work for the RFP together. It wouldn't be the whole RFP, it'll just be the scope of work is really kind of the crux of it. So we'll share that piece. The rest of it is very like boilerplate. So just this, we'll focus on the scope of work for the RFP to develop the business plan for the joint powers entity.
Right.
Thanks.
So
This is a great meeting.
great. Thank you. Thank you all so
Great.
much. Really
Thanks a
appreciate
lot.
your time. And we will see you next month.
See you
All right.
guys later.
Great.
Bye.
Bye all.